Teacher said, "Class, did you have a good day?" And little Johnny said, "Yes, ma'am. Had a great weekend, Saturday." And she said, "Well, what'd you do?" He said, "Well, me and my dad went fishing." She said, "Well, you went fishing? How'd you do?" He said, "Oh, we wore them out. We caught all kinds of fish." She said, "Really? How many did you catch?" He said, "Well, we caught 100 fish." She said, "Wow, little John, that is a lot. What kind of fish were they?" He said, "They were catfish." She said, "You caught 100 fish? How big were they?" He said, "They were humongous." She said, Well, how big is humongous?" He said, "Every single one of the fish we caught weighed 100 pounds." She said, "Little John, you mean to tell me you caught 100 fish and they all weighed 100 pounds apiece? That's 10,000 pounds. You don't have a boat that will be big enough to hold that many fish." He said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm telling you the truth. Me and my dad caught 100 fish that weighed 100 pounds apiece." She said, "Johnny, you are making that up." She said, "What if I just made up a story? Like I'm on my way to school and I'm walking down the sidewalk and this 10-foot grizzly bear comes out of the woods and is about to attack me. And then this little bitty 2-pound chihuahua jumps at the grizzly bear, grabs him by the nose, flips him over, beats him up, and chases him off. Would you believe that?" Little Johnny said, "Yes, ma'am, that's my dog." Well, kids will be kids, won't they? And you and I have probably seen some things happen in the lives of kids that when they happen, they make a huge impact. I'm going to tell you a story about a young man that I know. He's not young, well, actually he would be about my age, so he's remarkably young and enthusiastic, energetic. But when he was about 12 years old, this young man went to school. He was in about the 6th grade, and it was a class on dinosaurs. And he was told that dinosaurs evolved over multiplied millions of years. They came on the scene about 225 million years ago. They went extinct about 65 million years ago. And he was told that humans didn't evolve until about 5 million years ago, which would mean humans and dinosaurs separated by about 65 million years. Now, this young man grew up in the Lord's church. This young man had a faithful family that worshiped on a regular basis, that taught the story of Genesis to him. And when he heard about dinosaurs, he was fascinated by them. You start talking about a Tyrannosaurus Rex that is 20 feet tall at the hips, that has a skull that's 5.5 feet long, that is filled with 60 razor-sharp, serrated steak knife-like teeth, that can bite off a single bite of meat that weighs 500 pounds, take the whole front 2 pews here in one bite. Well, you're talking about something pretty exciting. An Argentinosaurus that can be 115 feet long, that has huge legs that are the size of building columns, that can weigh 100 tons. It's fascinating to a 12-year-old, and he wanted to know more about those. And so he went home to his mom, who was a strong Christian, knew the Bible well, had taught him the Bible, and he said, "Mom, we learned something really exciting today. We learned all about dinosaurs. What can you tell me about?" And this is what she told him. She said, "Dinosaurs never existed. What you learned today, there's no truth to it at all. You don't need to study about or learn anything about dinosaurs, because that's people who don't believe in God making up a group of creatures that never really existed to try to teach you something that's false." He's 12 years old. His books are showing him pictures where they're digging bones out of the ground of these massive reptiles, and his mom's telling him that they never existed. So what does he do? Well, for many years of his life, he didn't have an answer to this situation. He had some cognitive dissonance. He had hey, my mom's telling me this. I know that this information over here looks legitimate. How can these two things be reconciled? Do you know that for decades in the Lord's church, the go-to answer on dinosaurs and how they fit into the Bible and creation has been they never existed? My mom was teaching a ladies' class right outside of Columbia, Tennessee, where we live. The ladies' class had about 13 ladies in it. It was a smaller congregation of about 80 or so, just outside of Columbia. And she was talking to them about this subject, and they said, well, the preacher here who was here before the last preacher explained to us that dinosaurs never existed. Well, what happens when you have told someone that dinosaurs never existed, and they go to Wyoming, and they go to a fossil dig, and they dig one of those Tyrannosaurus Rex teeth up out of the ground like my coworker did this last summer. Well, you start to realize, well, hold on just a second. Maybe we haven't had an answer to these and we've needed one. And so what I'd like to encourage us this afternoon with is the fact that dinosaurs fit perfectly into the Bible. In fact, it's not the creationist or the person who believes in the Bible that should have any problem with dinosaurs. And I'm going to show you not only do dinosaurs fit perfectly into the Bible, but they also can be used effectively to encourage a person's faith, to talk to them about God, to excite them about the wonders of the Creator that they serve and that they know exist. Dinosaurs are not a subject to be afraid of. And that's what we're going to prove this afternoon. As you look in virtually every dinosaur literature, video, magazine, etc., you're going to see one primary idea. They're going to tell you all about the different kinds of dinosaurs, a Coelophysis, an Ankylosaurus, a Tyrannosaurus Rex, an Argentinosaurus. They're going to tell you all about that, and they're going to tell you how big they are and all the exciting stuff about them. But the main point of virtually every single piece of dinosaur literature that's put out by someone who is not a creationist, which is 99% of all dinosaur literature, dinosaur videos, dinosaur movies, etc. You're going to see it here in this Magic School Bus picture page. This is a picture of the page of the Magic School Bus about dinosaurs. And as you look at it, you see right here in the middle that he's reading the BC Boy comic strip. And he says, well, this story is make-believe. Well, why is that? Well, there were no dinosaurs in the time of cave people. Now, I want you to stop right there and analyze on a scriptural Bible basis that statement right there. Okay, according to Genesis chapter 1, God creates people, humans, the first pair, on the 6th day of the first week of creation. Now, according to your evolutionary idea, where did cave people come along? Supposedly, over about 5 million years, humans evolved from lower primates and they were less intelligent as they came up, and eventually, somehow, humans in their now super intelligent form, like we see Homo sapiens, that's the word that they use for humans, they evolved from these lower primate, knuckle-dragging, brute-browed, kind of idiotic type creatures. That's their idea of cavemen. But in Genesis chapter 1, God creates Adam and Eve, and they're intelligent from the very beginning, aren't they? In fact, so intelligent, have such a mastery of language that they can name the kinds of creatures, that they can commune with God in a very intelligent way. Okay, creation is not a bottom-up situation. It's you start in the perfect state, and when sin enters the creation, then things start to deteriorate, not to get better. So this idea, number one, is presenting that the evolutionary idea of humans evolving from primate ancestors, but number two, it's saying that dinosaurs died out way before those primate ancestors from humans ever showed up on the scene. Well, now you got another problem with the Genesis account, don't you? Because in Genesis chapter 1, you read about the creation, and God creates humans on day 6, but what else does He create on day 6? All land-living animals. Day 5, all the birds and fish. Day 6, all land-living creatures. Was Tyrannosaurus Rex a land-living creature? No, absolutely, positively. Walked on 2 big old feet, and Argentinosaurus walked on 4 really large feet. And if you were to ask the simple question, were they land-living creatures? The answer to that is yes. So hold on just a second. According to the Bible, God creates Adam and Eve, and He creates all land-living creatures, and Adam and Eve, Adam specifically, not Eve because she wasn't around yet, Adam would have named the kinds of creatures. Now, you've never had a problem thinking about that. Adam naming the dog kind. And Adam, the other day I was talking to a young kid, and this girl was about 4. No, she might have been 6, 7. She said she just didn't understand how Adam could name all the animals. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? She said, well, there's a bunch of dogs. How's he going to name all? Did he name one Spot? Did he name one? I said, no. He didn't name them individually. It's not like, oh, this is Spot and Fluffy and Furry and what. No, He named the kinds of animals. That's the dog kind. That's the horse kind. Now, wouldn't have been English like ours. It would have been called something else in We don't know what language he spoke, maybe a Proto-Hebrew language, something like that. But he would have just said dogs, horses. And we got no problem thinking about Adam naming those kinds. But then we do have a problem lots of times thinking about a Tyrannosaurus Rex walking in front of Adam. And Adam naming the dinosaur kinds. Well, why do we have a problem with that? Because every single magazine, video, movie, etc. that you've ever seen has this message in it. That no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. In fact, as you go through this, you have Flory writing for us a little one-page report that says when early humans appeared on Earth, dinosaurs had already been dead for millions of years. People found out about dinosaurs from their fossils. When early humans showed up, dinosaurs had been dead for millions of years. Well, according to the creation account, Adam was created on day 6. All the animals were brought in front of Adam for him to name. Early humans, Adam and Eve, were on the earth at the exact same time as dinosaurs. Now, one thing that we need to understand here is because dinosaurs are now extinct, lots of evolutionary teaching is fast and loose with that fact that they're extinct. And somehow, because we've never seen a dinosaur here in 2018, 2017, 2015, because we haven't seen them, then they suggest no human has ever seen them. But here's the fact of the matter. A bulk of all living creatures that have ever lived have now gone extinct. You never saw a woolly mammoth. But were they created on day 6? Land-living creatures? Yeah. You've never seen a dodo bird. But did God create dodo birds in the first week of creation? Absolutely positively. You've never seen a giant three-toed sloth. Some of them were 10, 15 feet tall. They're extinct. Saber-toothed tiger? Never seen one. But that doesn't mean that no human being has ever seen one. In fact, according to your creation account, God created all animals on days 5 and 6 of the creation. He created animals 5 and 6, human day 6. So humans and all kinds of animals would have lived at the exact same time. Now, what you're going to be told in every single science book on the subject that talks about dinosaurs is that's not true. And what I'm going to show you today is this idea that dinosaurs and humans living together is so foundational to evolution that if you could cause problems with this idea, well, I'm going to read it for you. Philip Kitcher wrote an anti-creationist book called Abusing Science, The Case Against Creationism, which Stephen Jay Gould called a brilliant book. And he claimed that if you could find solid evidence that would prove that humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time, he said, now watch it, this is as technologically savvy and exciting as I get. This is it. So if you're not interested in this and you don't feel like the special effects that are about to hit you from this screen are exciting, it's all downhill from here. It would shake the oh no. Somehow when we pulled it up on this computer, it did not transfer over. I did have like a little shake on the box where it would shake it. But like I said, now it's really downhill. Y'all are all finished now. Here's what he says. It'd shake the foundation of evolutionary theory because, of course, the dinosaurs are supposed to have been extinct long before the time of the hominids. Humans showed up. Now, I want you to understand that statement. That's not me saying this. That's a man who writes a book against creation and says, if you could prove that humans and dinosaurs lived at the same time, that would really destroy not the peripheral stuff of evolution, but what's he say it would destroy? The foundations of evolution, because, of course, dinosaurs and humans are supposed to have been separated by millions of years. So can we do that? Well, yes, we can, and I'm going to show you how we can do it. Number one, you could simply do this. You could say, we need to find a book that's the most historically accurate book in the world and see what it says about dinosaurs and humans. Now, the skeptic, the unbeliever, is going to object to this line of reasoning. The skeptic is going to say, no, you can't do that because you can't present the Bible as evidence that humans and dinosaurs live together. But here's the problem with objecting to this line of reasoning. Has the Bible proven time and again to be the most historically accurate book ever written? Yes. And so if you're going to dismiss it from evidence of what happened in history, you are then basically creating an entirely new area of, we're going to dismiss it not because it's not accurate, but because it says something we don't like, and so we're just going to get rid of that. So if you were just asked the question, let's say you don't think the Bible's inspired. I've got hours and hours and hours of material on that we could deal with, but let's say you don't. You just think, okay, here's an ancient book that if you compare it to other ancient books, it's the most historically accurate ancient book in the world. Does it say anything about dinosaurs? Well, it says several things that would relate to our discussion here. The first thing that we would come to realize about the biblical account of dinosaurs is just simply this, Exodus 20:11, for in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea. Now focus. And all that is in them. Now, we haven't had a problem with understanding that when it relates to other stuff. Just dinosaurs, because dinosaurs have been presented to us as never living with humans. So did God create kangaroos on day 6? Are they land living creatures? Well, turn in your Bible to the place that mentions kangaroos. You can't do that, can you? Now, have you ever said, we've got to get somebody to come in here and do a lesson on kangaroos, because a lot of people aren't thinking that kangaroos were created by God because they're never mentioned by name in the Bible, and so kangaroos are really causing some faith problems here. No, because you haven't been barraged with literature that says kangaroos and humans never lived at the same time. One good reason for that would be they're not extinct at the present. But you don't have a problem understanding God. What about koala bears? God create koala bears? What day? 6? Land living animal? Where's the Bible mention koalas? Just pick your Bible up, turn in the passage that mentions koala bears. Okay, see, we don't feel like we need to do that. Why? Because Exodus 20 verse 11 gives you the fact that God created the heavens, the earth, the sea, and what? All that is in them. And He tells you the time frame, in 6 days. So no problem there. Creation, any animal that you can mention that is not named specifically in the Bible was created on days 5 and 6. Doesn't matter if it's a Komodo dragon, doesn't matter if it's a kangaroo, doesn't matter if it's your favorite koala bear or a panda bear or whatever. Days 5 and 6, they were created. So if we wanted to say, does the Bible say anything about kangaroos? Yes. Implicitly, when it says He creates everything, that would include kangaroos, it would include koalas, it would include Tyrannosaurus Rexes, it would include Argentinosauruses, it would include every single animal that was ever created. No problem. Easy to understand. That's the first place we would go. But then a second idea would be, is there any creature in the Bible that is described in a way that sounds like a dinosaur? So you go to the book of Job. I'm going to give you a little quick history on the book of Job. Many of you probably understand it. Job is suffering severely, and he is not thinking God treats him fairly. And so he says to God, God, I believe that I'm right, and if you and I could just have a discussion about this, then I think I'd be able to present my case in a way that you'd realize you're not treating me fairly. And Job says, but the problem is, if you show up, your presence is going to kill me because you're so powerful and glorious, so I'm going to make you a deal. Come talk to me and make it so that you don't kill me when you show up, and I'll present my information, and I think you'll see I'm right. So in a very unusual epiphany, a vision, a interaction with God, God shows up and says, okay, Job, here I am. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but says, here I am. Let me ask you a few questions before we get started. Where were you when I set the world on its foundation of nothing? Where was Job? He doesn't know where it was. Job, can you dispense justice throughout all the earth? Job, can you feed every one of the animals? Job, he asked him about 50 questions, several of which we still haven't answered, and doesn't even let Job respond. And he has a real simple reason why he doesn't let Job respond, because the answer is, I don't know, to every one of those virtually that he's asking Job. Job, I'm bigger than you, I know more than you. You don't have all the information. So then he comes to Job chapter 40. This is where God is talking to Job. And He says, Job, you're questioning my authority. I want you to look at the behemoth. Now, there's something very specific I want you to understand from this passage. There are no accidental words in your Bible. Every one of them was calculated by an all-knowing God for you to get something out of. Every single word. Look at the behemoth which I made along with you. What does he mean when he said, which I made along with you? Okay, Job, I made this at the same time as I made humans. You, at your present condition, can look at this creature and get an understanding of what I'm saying. Now, it's suggested to us that Job is the oldest book in the Old Testament. Maybe very soon, within 100 years or so or more, we don't know for sure, but right after the flood. God is saying to Job, there's this creature, it's called a behemoth. I made him at the same time that I made you, and you can look at him and see some characteristics of this creature. So, God starts describing it. He says, before we do this, here's your behemoth. When you're translating something, there's a difference between translation and transliteration. All right? Translation is when there's a word in one language and you know what it is in the other language, so you put the word in the other language. I'll give you an example. In Spanish, the word dog in English is, you spell it P-E-R-R-O. You're supposed to be able to roll your R's, but I can't roll my R's, so forgive me here. But it's supposed to be perro, where you roll your R in Spanish, and perro and dog don't sound a thing alike. They don't have a D sound in both of the words. They don't sound anything alike. That's not a transliterated word. It's translated. Because you know what the animal is in the other language, and so you give the word that gives the animal. Now, if you're reading a language and you don't know what the animal is in your language, you do something called transliteration, where you take the first sound in their language and you put it in your language. You take the second sound in their language, you put it in your language. And basically, here's what that's saying. We don't know what this is, so we're going to make it sound like the word that you used. All right, so when you're reading the Hebrew, the first sound of the word behemoth is what? Ba. Next sound of the word behemoth is what? Ha. Next sound is ma. The last sound is ta. You know what behemoth sounds like in Hebrew? Well, if it's being read by a country boy from Tennessee like myself, it sounds almost exactly like behemoth in English. Because it's a transliterated word, here's what the translator said. Hey, we don't know what this is, so we're going to make it sound just like it sounds in Hebrew. Well, then you go to the, now I'm not picking on the American Standard 1901 translation, but this is the text of Job. This is a translator's note. This is the inspired text. This is not inspired, okay? So here we've got Behemoth, 1901 American Standard Translation, and they say this is supposed to be an elephant or a hippopotamus. Now, I want you to keep that in mind as we read the description of this behemoth. Okay, he eats grass like an ox. His strength is in his hips. His power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. Okay, God is using this creature to show Job how big he is, how big God is. And he says, Job, I want you to look at this big, humongous creature called a behemoth. We don't know what creature that is. I'm going to give you a description of him. He has a strength in his hips. His power's in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. Now, there are words that we often use in the English language that are used to show how big or how many something is. Now, I'll give you an example. In my growing up, my mom, for some reason, I don't know why she picked 42, but she used the number 42 to mean a lot of something. And so you'd pull up in a parking lot and there'd be, 150 cars or something. She said, well, there are 42 cars in that parking lot. Well, she just used 42 to mean a whole lot of something. Sometimes we'll use a word like if we were to see a large bull in a field, we would say that bull's big as a house. Well, what do we mean by that? He's just really, really big. What does like a cedar mean when you compare it to everything else in the Bible that describes cedars? Now, I'm going to give you what the Bible says about cedars. He shall grow up like a cedar of Lebanon. Indeed, Assyria was a cedar of high stature, whose height was like the height of the cedars, one of the highest branches of the cedars. What is the point of saying something is like a cedar? It's huge. It's really, really big. That's the whole point. In fact, as you look at some oriental cedars, you can see these guys, about 6 of them, are grown adult men standing at the base of some of these huge cedars. Now, whatever creature this is, behemoth, he was made along with Job, and he moves his tail like a cedar, and the American Standard 1901 translator said, well, it must be an elephant or a hippopotamus. Why would they say that? Because that's the biggest thing they've got, living at the time that they're translating the American Standard 1901. If they had something bigger, would they have suggested that? Yeah, probably, if there's something alive at the time, but they didn't, so they said, well, this is probably just an elephant or a hippopotamus. Here's the problem with that. He's supposed to move his tail like a cedar. Now, I mean, not to be funny, but kind of to be funny, but would anybody ever look at the elephant tail and say, wow, that is massive. That is like a cedar of Lebanon. No, never. And you think, well, maybe a hippo will be a little better. A hippo's tail is flat and small and designed literally to spread dung to fertilize stuff. That's what a hippo's tail. Would you ever look at a hippo tail and say that's like a cedar? You just wouldn't. It would. Now, why in the world would somebody translate a word behemoth? You don't know the creature, but you're going to say it's like an elephant or a hippo, but a very simple comparison between the description and the animal does not work. Do you have an animal that we know lived in the past that matches the behemoth description perfectly? Yeah, you do. You got a series of them. I mean, you got an animal that you know for a fact lived in the past that has a tail that's twice or 3 times as big as an entire elephant. Some of those cedars would grow to be 150 feet tall, and you've got a dinosaur, a plant-eating apatosaurus or a brachiosaurus, something along those lines, that is humongous, that has a tail that's as long as the elephant. Now, if you know this creature once lived, why wouldn't you match this creature with the description in Behemoth in Job chapter 40, of Behemoth in Job 40? There's only one reason you wouldn't. If all your life, every single book, every single magazine, every single picture, every single video told you that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. Now, if you hadn't been told that, and you heard a description of a plant-eating creature that had a tail that swung like a cedar, where's the first place you would go? To a dinosaur. First place, because it matches the description perfectly. And so we could say, not only does the Bible say God created everything in 6 literal 24-hour days, but we can then also say, and the behemoth is a very good match for a huge plant-eating dinosaur. Now then you ask yourself the next question. Well, hold on just a second. What does history say about dinosaurs? Let me give you just a little bit of history on the word dinosaur. Your Bibles are English-based Bibles, unless you're reading some original Greek, Hebrew, which every now and then I'll go to a congregation and there'll be a man who's studied it and brings it up to me and says, well, it says right here in the Hebrew. And I'll say, well, okay, great. I'll have to call my Hebrew buddy on that and look it up. But anyway, most people are reading English-based, New King James, American Standard, English Standard. Okay, that was translated for us. The Old King James was translated in the year 1611. Okay, we didn't start finding dinosaur fossils in modern times until about 1822. First known dinosaur fossil that was discovered that was called a dinosaur fossil. They found some, but they didn't know exactly what they were. Was in 1822, a guy by the name of Dr. Gideon Mantell, his wife, found a fossil of an iguanodon tooth in a rock quarry that was there was a big pile of rocks by the side of the road that they used to fill in potholes. She found it, took it to him. He collected fossils. They went to the quarry and found several more in 1822. So that sparked a treasure hunt of dinosaur fossils that culminated in 1841. A British anatomist who was a very famous British anatomist who named, labeled stuff that was from fossils, made up the English word dinosaur. He made it up in 1841. And dinosaur means terribly great or fearfully great lizard. What we would say, really big lizard. Okay, the word dinosaur was invented in 1841. Your English translation of the Bible was translated first in about 1611, before the word dinosaur was ever even invented. So, if someone were to say, well, you can't find the word dinosaur in the Bible. No, of course you can't. It's a word that was made up 200 years after the English translation was translated. So what would people have called them before they came up with the word dinosaur? What would you have called them? Something like a behemoth? Or, let me give you also a suggestion as to what you might have called them. Ancient stories of reptiles, they're not called dinosaurs, but dragons. Now you stop right there. People start thinking Harry Potter, Hogwarts. They start thinking all the old dragon myths and legends, etc. But before you close your mind to this idea, I want you to understand that in the Middle Ages, there would be scientific descriptions of animals, and the animals that are described, you would have dog, it is a furry animal, dragon, it is a lizard-like creature, and it would go down the list, and it would put dragons right in the list of every other known living creature at the time. Now, I want you to think about how this relates. They're not called dinosaurs, but dragons. The term dinosaurs wasn't coined until 1841, 1842. Ancients used the word dragon from the Greek drakon to refer to any large serpent or reptile, whether real or mythological, aquatic, aerial, or terrestrial. Have some dragon legends been embellished over time? How many fish did Johnny say he caught? 100? How big were they? Weighed 100 pounds apiece? You know, he exaggerated that, didn't he? But does that mean there never were anything called fish? Does that mean he didn't catch any fish? No, he probably caught some fish, and they might have been 2 or 3 pounds apiece, and he might have caught 20 or 30 of them. Sure, he's going to exaggerate the story, but it's based on a foundational truth, isn't it? Now, as you start looking at this, I want you to listen to what the skeptics say about dragons. The implacable mutual hostility between man and dragons, it's not a Western anomaly, it's worldwide. Okay, now listen to that. These guys, Carl Sagan, one of the most well-known atheists in the world, here's what he says. Hey, humans have been having problems with big reptiles, and it's not one area. It's not the West. It's not the East. In fact, if you go to Chinese ancient carvings and pottery, etc., Chinese have, I would say thousands, but tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of carvings of big reptiles. This is a worldwide phenomenon. Now, how long has it been going? Dragons are found in the myth and legends of cultures all over the world. People all over the world have believed in dragons. Well, now, how is that? People all over the world have believed in dragons. There's one creature remembered in the legends of almost every human culture that's ever existed. A creature depicted with remarkable similarity by Chinese, Aztecs, even Inuit, Eskimos, who are in a frozen land where no reptiles are found. Even they have stories of this animal, the dragon. Cultures from different continents, people who had no contact with one another, yet all of them have stories describing, now he says, the same mythical animal. You mean to tell me for the last thousands and thousands of years, every culture has talked about some really humongous lizards? Why lizards? Why not really humongous, whatever? They're lizards that humans can see and interact with? Well, keep going with me. I think you'll be even further convinced. The antiquity of dragon legends, the dragon slaying theme, was an important motif in the Sumerian mythology of the 3rd century, back to 2900 BC. This is the animal about which humankind has throughout our history been most compelled by. Dragon legends have been with humanity since the dawn of recorded history. You mean to tell me there's a creature that every culture describes as reptile, lizard-like, that many of which have really sharp, big teeth, some of which are humongous, and many soldiers and people have to fight them, and often people die in the fight? And that's been going since the beginning of recorded human history, and every culture has talked about these from the beginning of time? Yeah. What do they call them? Dragons? Okay, now, here are some descriptions of them. Scaly, hard, elongated bodies, long serpentine necks, enormous tails, stout legs, horned, knobby, or crested heads, fearsome teeth, claws, spikes, with or without bat-like wings, with 2 or 4 legs? What's that look like to you right there? Okay, it's named Dinosaur Rex. They found it in 2003. It's now in the Children's Museum in Indianapolis. Do you know what the word Dinosaur Rex means? King dragon lizard. Now, why in the world would you dig up a dinosaur fossil that you know is a dinosaur fossil and name it a dragon king? Well, because guess what that looks like? When you start to compare all the descriptions of dragons from ancient history, and they have knobby heads with spikes and sharp teeth walking on 2 or 4 legs, the description is perfect. Now, here's what one of the placards in the museum says about this Dinosaur Rex. When we saw this creature's head, we weren't sure what kind of dinosaur it was. Its spiky horns, bumps, and long muzzle looked more like a dragon. Okay, we've got descriptions from every culture around the world from the most ancient history that describe creatures that are lizard-like, that have spiky heads and sharp teeth, etc., and then we dig one up. And it looks so much exactly like a dragon, we name it dragon. And then we ask, okay, where did all these dragon legends come from? And here's what we're told. Let me give you this real quick. Oh, come on, wait just a second. This is Curthan in the top 10 beasts and dragons. Of all the creatures that ever lived, pterosaurs probably most closely resemble the dragons of European legend. Reptilian, featherless, pterosaurs flew on wings. So he says, okay, these flying reptiles probably most closely resemble the dragons of the ancient legends. So then we ask him, okay, where did people get the idea of dragons? And here's what he said. To people living in ancient times, a comet streaking through the skies with an icy tail millions of miles long would closely have resembled such a creature. Okay, so here's what he says. They came up with descriptions of dragons from looking at comets. You know the problem with that? Why would you say that's a reptile? Looks a lot more like a fish, tadpole to me. Which makes better sense? They saw this creature and talked about it as a dragon, or they saw a comet and made up the idea of dragon, and every culture that saw comets from ancient history across the world decided they were all going to call them a reptilian-like creature. Well, I think you can see exactly what's going on here. Yeah, there's stories of dragons from ancient history all the way back. Why? Because the word for dinosaur in ancient history was dragon. And I think that you can see exactly what's going on there. The idea that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur is just patently false. Number one, the Bible shows you that it's false. Number two, textual history shows you that it's false. But number three, we've got some physical evidence that shows you that it's false. Now, I'm putting this particular slide up here for a very specific reason. When I first started, I was probably out of school 2 years, and I had an audience of about 100 third graders and down. Kindergartners through third graders. We had them all sitting on the floor at Heritage University, and they called me in to talk to them about dinosaurs. Well, I was young, and I hadn't done a whole lot of this, and I had some slides and stuff. One of them was this particular slide, and I talked to them for about 30 minutes on how dinosaurs and humans live together, how the Bible proves that, how history proves it, how we've got a bunch of physical evidence I'm about to show you that proves it. And at the end of it, I said, and I was expecting them they listened so well, I was expecting an answer in unison. I said, did dinosaurs and humans live together? And what I was expecting all of them to say, in unison, because of the amazing job I had done communicating this truth. In unison, I expected them to say, yes. To my disappointment, I heard those little kids, they said, no. I said, what? I said, I just spent 30 minutes teaching you that dinosaurs, I didn't say it in that type of, it might have been a little bit more heated than normal. But I said, what are you talking about? I said, I just spent 30 minutes. One little kid raised his hand. He said, well, you put up a slide that said no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. I said, okay. From now on, anytime any kid sees that slide on my screen, they're then going to see a big, humongous red wrong on that, so they do not think that I'm teaching that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. That is false. human beings have seen live dinosaurs, and they were created on the same day as Adam and Eve. This is my coworker, Eric Lyons. We went to the Natural Bridges National Monument. It's been going on about 10 years ago. It's in Utah, right on the border of Colorado and Utah. We were there. We were there because there was an ancient Indian group called the Anasazi Indians. And they did some very specific types of carvings on these walls. You can't fake them. They're covered by a desert varnish that proves how old they are. And so we go there to the Kachina Natural Bridge. It's the third largest natural bridge in the world. This is it right here. You can't see me, but I'm a little stick figure right here underneath this natural bridge. Now the reason we went there, because like I said, the Anasazi Indians had carved some things on the sides of this particular bridge. Now the relief of this doesn't really do justice to how deep into the rock walls these are. They've been there for several hundred years. But as you look at these carvings, one of them looks just like this. Now we went there because it looked just like that, and because several of the evolutionists who wouldn't put humans and dinosaurs together admit that it looks just like a dinosaur. So we went there, took a couple pictures, etc. This is a quote from an evolutionist who wrote about this carving. And this was the reason we went there, basically. There's a petroglyph in Natural Bridges National Monument that bears a startling resemblance to a dinosaur. Let me stop you right there and ask you the simple question. Why would he say a startling resemblance? What does the word startling mean? Well, startling means that you find something you're not expecting and it's kind of scary to you. I'll illustrate that the best way I know how. When I was growing up, my mom says that she raised 4 boys, me and my 2 brothers and my dad at the time, because he would do stuff like this. We were living in East Tennessee, Blountville, Tennessee, and Dad always had cows and stuff, and he was at the barn, and there in the feed room, he found about a 6-foot-long black snake. And he thought, you know what, my boys need a 6-foot-long black snake as a pet for a little while. So he brought it back in a feed sack, gave it to us, and said, hey, you know, here you go. Here's your new pet. Well, that's how we rolled when I was growing up. So we were like, all right, hey, new 6-foot-long black snake. This is great. So we played with it a little while. Then we put it in an aquarium that didn't have any water in it, in a little, almost like it was a screen-in porch-like. It wasn't necessarily a part of the house. It was like an add-on part of the house. But we put it out there, put a rock on the top of the little lid that we had on it, and we thought, okay, this will be good. Woke up the next morning. Black snake was gone. So, you know, kids, they're not real enthusiastic about once it's gone, it's gone. And so we looked around a little while, didn't find it. There's a little hole kind of under the door that looked like it could have crawled out of. So we just said, hey, must have crawled out, must have gotten out. 3 days later, my mom is in her closet going to get a pair of shoes. All right, and we hear my mom scream, a blood-curdling scream, because she opens her closet door, she reaches down to get a pair of shoes, and what does she find? Yes, she finds a 6-foot-long black snake in her shoes. Now, do you think she was startled by that? Yeah, she was startled. You know why she was startled? Because she's not looking to find a black snake in her closet. How many times had she been to her closet and there not been a black snake? Hundreds? Thousands? When you find a black snake somewhere where you're not looking for it, it's very startling to you. Why would this particular individual, Fran Barnes, who is an evolutionist, all he does is study rock art. I mean, he's a rock art professional. And he comes to this one particular carving that the Anasazi Indians put on the wall, and he says, you know, whatever, but it bears a startling resemblance to a dinosaur. Now, is that startling to a creationist? Not startling at all. In fact, it's exactly what you would expect. Okay, you start thinking through what would happen. Number one, if dinosaurs and humans were created on the same day, number one, the Bible would say that. Number two, history would bear that out. You'd see texts that describe creatures like a dinosaur in ancient literature. And number three, you'd probably find some carvings and stuff of these creatures before they had cameras and could take pictures, etc. They'd probably carve some stuff that looked like one. And so, that would be startling to a person who believes in evolution and has always been taught in every single magazine, every single book, every single video, no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur. You see where humans carve something that looks like a brachiosaurus, a brontosaurus, and a potosaurus, and wow, it's kind of scary to you. But if you're a creationist and you know the true history of what happened, you would expect that. Not only is it not startling, it's not even surprising. In fact, it's something that you would eventually expect to see happen somewhere in the world when you find ancient carvings. As you continue to go through this idea that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur, that's just false. We have numbers of carvings and pieces of evidence that show that. Let me tell you what we know about this. You know, we have Mother's Day here, and that's pretty exciting. We get our mom some little bracelet or something. This guy took Mother's Day to the next level. His name was Javarman VII, and he built a series of temples in 1187 AD. We know for a fact exactly when he built it, for his mom to memorialize and commemorate the life of his mother. Now that was some kind of Mother's Day present, and we know exactly when he started building these temples in Cambodia. Javarman VII, 1187 AD. These look like they just got pulled straight off of some archaeological movie like a Tomb Raider or Raiders of the Lost Ark, something like that, Indiana Jones. There is a pillar that has carvings of animals. There's a carving up here of something that looks like a salamander. There's no way you could fake this because see that black stuff that's in the creases? That's something called patina, and it only builds up over time. You just can't fake these things. Okay, so there is this carving. Now, if you don't believe humans and dinosaurs ever existed, and you come to this carving, you have to say something like it's not really a carving of a dinosaur. Because virtually every group that I've ever presented that to, they will say, yeah, I mean, it looks like a dinosaur. And then I say, what kind of dinosaur? And you know who knows what kind of dinosaur? Yeah, well, everybody that's 12 and under. You know who doesn't know what kind of dinosaur, generally speaking? Everybody that's 35 and over. And the in-between sometimes know. What kind of dinosaur would that look like? Stegosaurus? Yeah, now let me ask you a question. If your 12-year-old knows what kind of dinosaur that looks like and you don't, what does that say about where they're getting their information about dinosaurs? Not you. They're getting it from somewhere else, and let's make sure we're giving them the good information where they're getting the truth about this stuff. But you look at that and, well, if you are just going to go to the art professionals that talk about this particular carving, not creationists at all they do is take pictures of Cambodian temple art. Here's what they say. Well, it's a striking resemblance to a Stegosaurus. Now, these guys aren't creationists. They're not trying to push an agenda. All they're saying is, hey, I take pictures of art in Cambodia all the time, and this one looks like a Stegosaurus. Now, I have had somebody who is writing about that, and he says, no, that does not look like a dinosaur at all. It looks like a wild pig with bushes behind it. Number one, tail would be exceptionally large, and the bushes would be perfectly manicured and put perfectly on this wild pig's back. Would you ever, in your right mind, if you don't have an agenda to push, look at that carving and say, yeah, wild pig with bushes behind it? Exactly what I was thinking. Just like you wouldn't look at a comet and say, oh, looks just like a Draco Rex. Well, why in the world would you try to stretch this stuff to say that looks like a wild pig with bushes behind it, although they're perfectly manicured and the best landscaping company in the city would have had to do that for you? Why would you say that? Well, because, I mean, if you say it looks like a dinosaur, and you know this guy carved it in 1187, and you know we didn't start finding the fossils until 1822, then that means this guy would have had to seen one. And that means humans and dinosaurs would have been living at the same time, and that means that would shake the foundation of evolutionary theory, and you don't want to shake the foundation of evolutionary theory, so instead of be honest, you say that looks like a pig with bushes behind it. You see what we're challenged with here? As you continue, this idea that no human being's ever seen a live dinosaur is patently false. Now this to me is some of the most exciting. Several years ago, the lady that actually found this in the Tyrannosaurus Rex femur bone, she was scared she was going to lose her job, and so she redid the test 5 times. And here's what happened. She found a Tyrannosaurus Rex femur, supposed to be 65, 70 million years old. They break it apart, and they start looking in the Tyrannosaurus Rex femur, and they realize, hold on just a second, it's not all fossilized. Now, a fossil of something is not that thing, it's rock in the shape of that thing. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you have a bone and it's fossilized. When you dig it up, you're not dealing with a calcium bone. You're dealing with rock that has replaced all of that in the shape of a bone, right? That's what a fossil is. Now, when they dug up this Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil and they broke it in half, they realized not only is this not completely fossilized, but then they started doing research on some of the material they found, the collagen and red blood cells. And they found out that we've got soft tissue in the middle of a bone that was supposed to be 70 million years old. In fact, so soft is this tissue that they said that you could grab it on either side, pull it apart, let it go, and it'd snap back together. It's still springy. Now, this is supposed to be a 75 million year old bone, and we've got soft tissue in it that the lady, when she found the soft tissue in it, she did the test 5 times because she thought when she reported it, she was going to lose her job. Why? Why do you lose your job when you report the scientific evidence, the facts? Well, because if this really is soft tissue and this bone is supposed to have been around for 70 million years, well, come to find out this is not exceptional at all. Many of the fossils that we have found, if you break them open, you look inside, lots of times they have soft tissue in them. My coworker called this particular lady that found the stuff and talked to her personally about it. Now, what you should do, if you've always been told that humans and dinosaurs were separated by millions of years and that dinosaur was 70 million years old, that dinosaur fossil, what you should do when you find soft tissue in it is say, you know what, no, we've been wrong. We're going to have to change the way we think about stuff. You know what they did do? Oh, we didn't know soft tissue could last 70 million years. Yeah, you know, we didn't either. You know why we didn't know soft tissue could last 70 million years? Because it can't. And just another piece of evidence that shows you, okay, so the question is, where did the dinosaurs go? Do you know that they suggest to us that 98% of all animals that have ever lived on this earth are now extinct? 98% of them. So if you had a graph and you had 100 animals from the time of creation and you circled those 100 animals that were alive at creation, how many of them would you have today approximately? 2 of them. Extinction is nothing new. Now, it just so happens that dinosaurs are extinct because they've been defined out of existence currently. And here's what I mean. Are there some really big lizards around now? Is the Komodo dragon a really big lizard? Yeah, really big, 10 feet long. Some of the dinosaurs were only the size of chickens or even smaller. Komodo dragon is 10 feet long and can run as fast as a horse can gallop for short distances and can eat 80% of its own body weight in 15 minutes. Much like most 16-year-old boys that I know who are growing. But I mean, you're talking, it goes into the meal weighing 100 pounds, it comes out of the meal weighing 185 pounds. It's huge, massive lizard. Why is it not called a dinosaur? It's still alive. Crocodiles, humongous lizard-like creatures, some of them 20, 25 feet long, weighing over 2,000 pounds. Why aren't they called dinosaurs? Well, they're still alive. Are they fearfully great or really, really big lizards? Yeah. Now, technically, if you were to go to the dinosaur journals, you would read that, well, there's a difference in the hip of this, there's a difference in the bone structure, etc. But basically what's been done is every fearfully great, really big lizard that's alive is not a dinosaur. Everyone that's extinct happens to be a dinosaur. Okay, well, as you look at this idea of where did the dinosaurs go, you start seeing a pattern. This is the Dinosaur National Monument. Eric and I visited it the same trip that we visited the Natural Bridges National Monument. If you were to look straight through there, you would not see a wall. This building is not built on a wall. There's no wall on that side of the building. In fact, it's built onto the cliff of the rock face. And when you look at it, you see these fossils. That's the wall. It's been built there so that when you walk across the other side, you're looking, and that whole rock cliff is dinosaur fossils, all of them. And then over here on the left, it will tell you what kind of fossil you're looking at. That's a rib bone from an Apatosaurus. That's a backbone. That's a femur, or whatever it is that it's telling you. That's a backbone from one of the plant-eating dinosaurs, I believe it was. And there are little captions that tell you what you're looking at. Well, then you get to this mural that's on the left side, and it tells you this. After a seasonal flood, this scene of about 145 million years ago is based on clues found in the rock face behind you, carcasses brought downstream by fast-moving, muddy water. Okay, now when stuff dies, it doesn't fossilize most of the time. You know, when people out west pulled their trains up and they plowed down huge herds of buffalo, Did those herds of buffalo fossilize? No, they shot them. They left them right there on the top of the ground, and scavengers got them. They didn't fossilize. Most stuff that dies doesn't fossilize. You run over a possum on the side of the road, armadillo, is it going to fossilize? Probably not. Not much of a chance of it fossilizing. Why? Because if you're going to fossilize something, you have to bury it very, very quickly. You have to get away from all parasites and scavengers and oxygen. Well, now how do you get 1,800 dinosaur bones to all get buried at once? Fast-moving, muddy water? Well, you take this idea and you start typing in every dinosaur fossil graveyard that exists today, and virtually without fail, I've only ever found one that suggested any other possibility, and they didn't even say it was one. They said this might have happened instead of a flood. Every single one says a regional flood, a local flood, a fast-moving seasonal flood, a flood. You mean to tell me that virtually every single dinosaur graveyard is described as having been caused by a flood? Well, yeah, what else could bury thousands, literally thousands of dinosaurs that are huge, that weigh multiple hundreds of tons, and bury them all together at once and fossilize them with no scavenging? Huge flood. You got any idea where you would read about a flood that big? Oh, I think you do, and that's why we're here today. Doesn't it make sense that Noah's flood would have been so massive that it would have fossilized literally thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dinosaur fossils, and we would dig them up later? Sure, absolutely. But now here's your next question. Hold on, Kyle. All right, you're telling me that a lot of dinosaurs died in the flood, but the Anasazi Indians were carving something that looked just like a dinosaur. But Javarman VII carved something that looked just like a stegosaurus. So that means some of the dinosaurs would have had to have lived through the flood, and if they're land-living creatures, that means they would have had to been on the ark. I mean, you can just see that. Ham comes in, he's got his arm in a sling. He says, "Shem, I'm not feeding that Tyrannosaurus Rex again. That's you for the rest of the week." My son came up with kind of a funny... No, my daughter actually made this up. Why were Noah and his family never hungry? Because they always had ham? Yeah, I know. It's pretty bad. But anyway, you got the ark. How are you going to fit two Argentinasauruses on the ark? How are you going to fit two huge Tyrannosaurus Rexes on the ark? You start thinking about that, and the skeptic, when you get to this point, says, okay, well, if you're saying all that, how are you going to get them on the ark? No, that's a really good question. It's really got a very simple answer. In fact, if I were to say to you, okay, I'm going to give you 5 minutes for you to write down the most plausible answer as to how you can get dinosaurs on the ark, and the best answer wins $10,000. Like I said, hypothetical, of course. I am sure that many of you would come up with the most probable answer, and the most probable answer is, as you start looking at the creatures that went on the ark, did you ever read that God said, I'm going to send you two of the biggest of every animal that I can find? The fact of the matter is, the largest dinosaur egg we've ever found is about 24 inches across, 2 feet. Now, here's what's interesting, especially about reptiles. If you were to take a crocodile or alligator, I was reading about it was in the Philippines, they found this crocodile. The crocodile weighed 2,000 pounds, and it was 24 feet long. 24 feet long is 8 really, really big steps. You go 8 steps, start right there, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. From there to here, crocodile was that long from tip to tail, weighed 2,000 pounds, a ton. Do you know how long a 2,000-pound, 24-foot-long crocodile starts? 6 to 8 inches, about that. You never read that God said, I'm going to send you the biggest 2 Argentinasauruses that I can find, and you're going to have to see where you can put them on the ark. Wouldn't it have been very, very reasonable for God to have sent young dinosaurs to Noah? Number one, the Bible says God brought the animals to Noah. Noah didn't go out and find them. And number two, why wouldn't he send an Argentinosaurus that was 6 months old, that was 36 inches? Well, it would save on space. It would save on food consumption. If they didn't go into some type of hibernation while they were on the ark, it would save on any number of things, and it makes perfect sense. Do you know that if you take all of the information together about dinosaurs, dinosaurs aren't anything for the creationists to be afraid of? In fact, let me tell you this. when God was talking to Job about the behemoth, He was using the behemoth to show His awesome might and power. Now, we know God created every single creature in this world, and here's what else we know, that people who believe in evolution and teach atheistic naturalistic evolution have been using dinosaurs to teach our kids a false idea for the last 100 years. So isn't it time we as Christians take those creatures back and we say to our young people, you learn about dinosaurs? That's awesome. Dinosaurs were amazing. Now let me tell you the truth about them and how they fit into God's creation. And we take those creatures back and we show our kids a Tyrannosaurus Rex and we say, isn't this Tyrannosaurus Rex amazing? And isn't the God who created him even more amazing? It's time that we take dinosaurs back and use them for what they were initially, originally, and always designed to be used for. And that's the same thing you were designed to be used for, to bring glory to your Creator. And it's time we take those creatures back and we start using them for what they were designed to be used for, and that's to bring glory to their Creator.